There's a type of woman who gets called Ice Princess and emotionally unavailable for her whole life. But here's what nobody knows. She feels everything so deeply that it's paralyzing. If you've ever been told that you're cold when you're actually drowning inside, this video will change everything that you thought you knew about yourself. Now, you're exhausted, aren't you? You're exhausted from being misunderstood by everyone around you. People see your success, your composure, your ability to handle everything that gets thrown at you, and they assume that you have it all figured out. But inside, you're drowning. You feel everything so intensely that it's physically painful. Yet when you try to express this to others, if you even get that far, they look at you like you're speaking a foreign language. They don't get you at all. Now, I know that you've been called emotionally unavailable. You've been called cold. You might even have been called selfish by people who matter to you. Your own family members maybe think that you don't care. Partners might have accused you of being distant when you're actually terrified of being too much. You've probably been to therapy, but you walked away feeling even more broken than before because nothing the therapist suggested seemed to fit your experience. You know that something's different about you, but you can't put your finger on what it is. I'm Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist with 16 years of training and experience helping people understand their attachment patterns. Through my work with thousands of clients, I discovered something that traditional psychology has completely overlooked. There's an entire group of women who've been suffering in silence, flying under the radar because they're too well-behaved to get attention. I'm the only attachment specialist who's identified and named this pattern, and I call it quiet, disorganized attachment. Now, listen closely to what I'm about to tell you, because what you're going to learn in this video will finally make everything click into place. I'm going to show you exactly why you feel like you're living behind a mask, why your most caring actions get misinterpreted as coldness, and why your nervous system learned to freeze instead of fight or flee. More importantly, you'll discover that this isn't a character flaw or a mental illness. It's an intelligent survival adaptation that has kept you safe. And by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for letting people finally see the real you without the terror of being hurt again. But first, you need to understand why you've been completely invisible to the mental health community and why that's actually not your fault. Now, in attachment science, there's an attachment style called disorganized, which just means cannot be neatly organized into either anxious attachment of self-blaming or avoidant attachment of other blaming. You cannot be organized into either camp, so you are disorganized somewhere in the middle. Now, this was supposed to be a catch-all term back when attachment theory was coined in the 1950s, about 70, 80 years ago. But now, attachment has become much more of a problem. In fact, estimates put disorganized attachment style, whereas it was 5% back in the day, now at 15 to 25%. It has gone up 3 to 5 times the amount it was back then. Because of this, disorganized attachment style no longer looks the same. In fact, I've discovered 2 distinct types of disorganized attachment that I've classified. One is loud disorganized style, what they used to call fearful avoidant. That was the second classification group of styles. They tried to change the name, but then they started confusing fearful avoidant with dismissive avoidant. I have reclassified it simply loud disorganized. This is outward, expressive, explosive, chaotic, emotional, crying in public, blowing up relationships, sabotaging, not bad people, but outwardly expressive of how they feel to get attention and drive results. Loud disorganized is loud. It's very visible. It's the one that everybody knows, and it's the most unstable. Again, not bad people, but it's most unstable. In fact, it's so unstable that they are trying to sort out how to differentiate between personality disorders and this fearful avoidant, now called loud disorganized, because it's so chaotic. It almost looks like a personality disorder. Now, when you contrast that with the experience of what we now call quiet disorganized attachment style, the thing I have discovered and I'm bringing to you, you can see why it gets overlooked. Quiet disorganized is secretly anxious and fearful and self-blaming on the inside, but visibly on the outside, avoidant, disconnected, silent. Okay, the person acts what we would consider avoidant. They avoid conflict. They avoid deep interactions. They avoid deep discussions. They avoid sharing their needs. They avoid discussing their feelings at all. They actually avoid even having emotional expressions. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But on the inside, they are boiling with intense, overwhelming anxiety that nobody ever sees. This is the contrast. And this is why the big, loud, explosive disorganized attachment style gets all the attention, and the quiet disorganized has been invisible for the entire history of psychology. Okay, where the other style, loud, is swapping partners a lot, explosive, chaotic, emotional, very emotional, crying, very noticeable. Quiet disorganized gets none of that attention at all. And that's actually how you probably grew up as a child. We're going to talk about that here in a moment. Now, I recently read this comprehensive analysis by Anna Drescher on Simply Psychology, and a very interesting point that she brings up is that disorganized attachment style affects about 15% of the general population, at least, as we said, based on research, but that number jumps to 25 or 34% in families that are facing poverty. It can be as high as between 48 and 90% in documented abuse situations. This shows just how much environmental stress contributes to this pattern. Your childhood is massive for how you grow forward. Now that's looking at disorganized style. And remember, like I said, the field of psychology doesn't recognize quiet disorganized. So that's 15% loud disorganized. Why do quiet disorganized types why are they invisible? Because they have no loud explosive behaviors. They're inward seeking. Instead of exploding, they implode. They freeze. They're the only style, really, most of the time, to go from fight, flight, fawn, and the fight or flight instinct down into freeze response. And that characteristic is definitive of this style, freezing. Being terrified and petrified of doing things wrong. Your nervous system is freaking out. You are petrified in your relationships. You are constantly overthinking everything. It is anxious attachment style on steroids, but silent and internal, keeping everything locked down, never disruptive, never complaining, silent. You could get shot in the arm and you wouldn't even squeak. Okay? You fly under the radar just like you did in childhood, and you never get visibly seen by anyone. Everyone assumes that you are the one with everything put together, and you've never felt more alone and more afraid. Now, the research confirms what I've seen clinically and in my coaching practice. Disorganized attachment is often very relationship specific. As Drescher notes, an infant might be disorganized with one parent, but secure with another, or anxious with one parent, but avoidant with the other. That explains why you might function perfectly in some relationships, but struggle very deeply in others. The ones that remind you most of pain and the ones that are most intimate and connected are going to be the ones where you struggle the worst. But here's what's really heartbreaking about this. The very survival mechanisms that kept you safe as a child are now the prison walls that are keeping you from the love that you do desperately crave. In the next portion of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how this prison was built. Now, I call this performance-based safety, and it's created in family environments that are especially chaotic, hurtful, massively critical, parents had trauma, or there's abuse happening, okay? Family environments where emotionality, emotional overflow, you expressing feelings as a 2-year-old was punished in some way. Maybe physically, maybe loudly, verbally, but punished. You were hurt for having emotions. Being overly praised for keeping everything in touch and inside was also good. You were praised for your silence, or at the least, that was the only time you weren't hurt. You were hurt till you pulled into your shell like a turtle and then locked down, and then the hurt stopped. And you learned that the only place you were safe was inside the shell of your mind. You were being punished for not doing enough, not being enough, maybe praised for doing it right. A lot of my people who come in with this style, they were in terrible abusive situations, some of the most grueling you could possibly imagine, but they were trained, almost like an animal, to do everything the other person wanted them to do, to always perform perfectly. Now they go forward in adulthood, always performing perfectly. Everything becomes performance driven. They only feel safe when they're performing at 100%. Even 99% doesn't feel safe to them. Now I'm going to be really blunt. These people have some of the most painful, agonizing childhood stories you have ever heard in your life. Levels of abuse you can't even begin to imagine. And they don't tell you those stories as if they are massive, painful, trauma-ridden stories. They tell you those stories as if they are picking up the groceries. They think it's normal. They detail stories they think are just every day. They really think every home was like that. They've really gone so deep into it that they've excused the people who did it. They're more likely to make excuses for the parents and family that hurt them. The problem is that they never really felt safe, and they were taught that it was their fault for not performing. That's the anxious attachment component on the inside. I got hurt because I didn't perform good enough. They always feel in danger unless they perform. Now, here's something interesting about the quiet, disorganized brain. We can actually scan it and see that the prefrontal cortex is overdeveloped. The prefrontal cortex is the judgment center, the discipline center, the control center. It overdevelops to squash emotional expressiveness. This protects the quiet, disorganized person from having feelings. It blocks them from feeling their own feelings. They can turn off their feelings completely to please other people. Now, this numbs their negative emotions so that they can dissociate easier, not feel it, and not have problems with it. But it also shuts off their ability to do a status check on how am I feeling? What's my stress level? It numbs them and blinds them to their own experiences. And it even stops their ability to feel positive emotions, at least to some extent. Now, what's really fascinating is that two of the original researchers of disorganized attachment in particular, psychologists Main and Solomon, described this as what they call fright without solution. The child wants to get closer to a caregiver for comfort. It's normal. I have 5 children. They all crave comfort at times, and your parent is supposed to be safe. But in the case of quiet, disorganized people, the caregiver is also the source of their fear. So I want to get close to the person who makes me most afraid. This creates what they identified as a contradictory neural activation. Your brain sends simultaneous approach and avoid signals at the same time about your caregiver for your entire childhood. And it shapes your brain, pulling apart in these two different directions. I get asked all the time, what is my attachment style? What is my attachment style? What is my attachment style? So I have finally launched the attachment assessment. This is not a short quiz that just spits out an answer after 3 seconds. This is a thorough, in-depth, science-backed assessment. Check it out on my website, adamlanesmith.com, and learn your attachment style, the severity of what you're dealing with, and some next steps you can take right now to build very secure attachment. Now, this leads us to what's called the limbic system: fight, flight, fawn, freeze. The fight or flight instinct, when your prefrontal cortex is overwhelmed with emotions, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, activates your limbic system instead to stay alive. Now, can this child fight? No, because that contradicts the I want to get close to you and feel safe. I don't want to hurt anybody. And anyway, hurting someone was the opposite of performing. It'll get worse. I don't want to fight. Well, what about fleeing? Can I run away? Well, no, I can't run away from my family because I'll die. I have to stay with my family. I have to stay here, so I can't run away. Can I fawn? Can I people please? Well, maybe if they're in the right mood, if they want to be happy, if I've performed right, if I got straight A's on everything, and not even straight A's, but A pluses on everything, I've did everything perfect, and they're in a good mood, then yeah, fawning works. But if that's not the case, what do I do? The system says there is no hope, and it activates the last layer, freeze. You cannot fight, you cannot flee, you can't fawn. You might run away in adult situations when you can, but it'll make it worse. Freezing happens when our nervous system says there's something attacking me, and I can't run away or fight. Everything will get worse. So I'm going to lay on the ground. I'm going to cover my face and my organs in baby pose, and I'm just going to get through it. It's like if a bear is attacking you. What do? Well, you probably can't fist fight the bear. It'll probably just kill you. You can't run away because it'll outrun you. You can't fawn. Oh, nice bear. Hey, I'll give you $10. It doesn't work. So the bear goes to town on you. You curl up in a ball and you wait for it to be over. This is what the quiet disorganized person's immune system, limbic system, hormone system, neurotransmitter system, everything is built around. Freeze and wait for the damage to be done. Now, right now, you might be hearing this and thinking, oh gosh, has Adam been following me around? No, this is just a pattern that I've identified over and over and over. But you might also be wondering, Adam, if this pattern kept me alive, why does it feel like it's killing me now? That's exactly what we're going to talk about next. But before that, if this is hitting home, you need to know something very important. What I'm describing isn't just relationship problems. It's a complete nervous system that's been wired for survival instead of connection. I do have something that can help you rewire this from the ground up. But first, you need to see what I'm about to reveal about your relationship patterns, because it is going to shock you how different you really are from most other people. So stick until the end. Next, and we've got to talk about this piece. This might really surprise you, but bear with me here. How you appear versus how you feel. Your external appearance is not doing you any favors. You look aloof. You look cold. You probably get called ice princess, right? A lot of my female clients come in their 60s, 70s, and their adult children say, I don't think you love me. And she says, Adam, how could they say that? I don't understand. I think about them every day. Their own children will think that they're disinterested. They look cold and robotic, detached, selfish. They look like they're not willing to get connected. They look like they think they're above everyone. They look like they don't care about others. In fact, they have almost no expression on their face. They have a mask. It's what we call zero affect, flat affect, just blank. This is outward protection. Because when you were a child, you probably got your butt whooped or beaten or screamed at for having any emotional expression at all. Any emotional expression was treated as defiance, non-compliance, lack of enthusiasm. You're not serving me enthusiastically enough, right? And even if that wasn't directly the case, it was implicit in the relationship. You must fawn or I will hurt you. Well, the best way to fawn is to do what everyone wants and not do anything they don't, including having one stray expression of pain, sadness, or frustration. So your face goes blank. And you look like you don't care. Because not everyone around you is brutal and abusive and controlling. The people you're out in the world with as an adult, at work, hopefully in your friendships, they're not sociopaths who want to mistreat you. They're people who want to take you to lunch and get to know you and be your friend. So when you look blank and completely disinterested, they don't think, oh, good, you're quietly serving me. They think, why doesn't this person care about me? I know that a lot of the people watching this show right now have had attachment issues for their entire life. That's why I want to invite every single one of you to check out my attachment repair program. It just might be the jump that you need to go from insecurely attached and lonely and frustrated to fully secure, connected, and bonded in a great relationship like nothing you've ever felt before. Check out my website, adamlanesmith.com, for the attachment repair program. Now, here's what nobody gets. The internal reality is the opposite. Quiet, disorganized people care so incredibly deeply about everyone around them. I can't even begin to tell you the levels of compassion and empathy that quiet, disorganized people have for others. The idea of walking across a field of grass and accidentally stepping on a flower or a bug bothers them tremendously. They'll walk way out and around just so they don't cause inconvenience to non-human life. Okay? You talk about pacifism, you talk about gentleness, that's baked into quiet, disorganized because they understand what it's like to live in absolute fear and absolute pain all the time. They are overwhelmingly terrified, though, and fearful and traumatized on the inside. It's all locked behind a mask. They're completely disconnected from their emotional brain. Their prefrontal cortex squashes emotional expression. Their internal and external is so opposite. It shocks people to find out how anxious and afraid they are. Someone says something in a conversation and they go, what do I say? And they start running 5 different scripts through their brain simultaneously, but then their brain begins to cook and fry and they don't know what to say and they don't want to hurt someone or offend somebody. So they just stare silently. And the other person, as the silence drags on, says, wow, you're refusing to answer me? Well, that's rude. And on the inside, the person is saying, I don't want to offend this person or make them upset. What do I say? And they just freeze. Completely opposite realities from internal and external. Now, let's sort this out because this is completely different from other attachment styles. Purely anxiously attached people are fairly anxious on the outside. You could smell it. They don't freeze and just like lock up, usually. They don't have a flat affect. They're, oh no. And they're like outwardly like panicking visibly. They're trying to get attention sometimes. They're highly emotional. They're constantly people pleasing. They look like they're running around pleasing people and trying to be nice. So they don't look disinterested. They look overly interested. Okay. Purely avoidant people, they believe everyone else is the problem. So you look avoidant on the outside, but avoidantly attached people will throw up boundaries. No, I'm not doing that. They'll actually put up hard boundaries with people. They'll disconnect. They'll flee, but they'll also fight. Avoidantly attached people are willing to fight. Quiet, disorganized, total pacifists most of the time. Loud, disorganized, we talked about. Explosive, chaotic, outward swapping partners every 90 days. Not this style. Okay. This is a very specific combo that makes quiet, disorganized very unique. They have empathy. They look disconnected. They're massively high functioning, usually, unless the trauma is really bad. Very different. And this is why you've been invisible for so long, because no one even knew what you were feeling. So now that we understand the childhood, we understand the brain, we understand how people are seeing you, let's go to the next part. It's going to change what you thought you knew about yourself. Let's talk again about that freeze response because it's very specific and unique and telling about quiet, disorganized style, okay? That freeze is an instinctive response when things feel hopeless. Bunker down, barely survive, clean up later. It keeps you from saying the wrong thing, from making things worse. It prevents you from damage, especially in childhood. It keeps you now from being hopeful. It prevents you from having hope, from leaning in too far, from dreaming. Okay? It prevents you from leaning into relationships or intimacy. It keeps you from experiencing worse outcomes, sure, like the worst. You're trying to avoid nuclear death, but it also prevents you from bonding and intimacy and trust and safety and being happy or fulfilled. You're probably hearing this saying, Adam, there's no such thing as happiness and fulfillment. Yes, that would be your quiet, disorganized brain and your trauma response. The freeze response is what you learned as a child, but now it's preventing you from bonding with healthy people. It's built to when you deal with damaged, hurtful people, but now it's preventing you from bonding with good people. See the difference? Now, as an adult, this freeze response prevents you from even being able to speak up, raise concerns in relationships, ask about red flags. Most quiet, disorganized people have loud, disorganized, or personality disorder partners who hurt them again and again and again and again, and you can't even speak up about it until it's so horrible that it's fully unsustainable. Only then will you speak up. And you might ask a polite question. This survival mechanism, again, it worked in childhood. It limits your adult relationships, and this is one of the biggest things we have to overcome. The protection that it provides a little bit now, but at the cost of any authentic connection. Usually, the freeze response is fixed, by the way, by understanding a pattern of what to do. You need a detailed instruction guide on what to do in every circumstance, or at least how to generalize what to do in every circumstance that you come across. A detailed field guide to human relationships and conversations. When you learn those things, the freeze response diminishes because now your brain isn't grasping for what to do. It goes to section 3, paragraph A, verse 12, and then does that. That's what your brain's going to need to fix that freeze response. Now, in Ann Drescher's research on Simply Psychology, it perfectly captured what's happening neurologically during freeze moments. When a child experiences frightening caregiving, their brain struggles to process what's happening and leads to what she calls a looping or a jammed attention system. This is exactly what creates that blank, frozen feeling that you experience during emotional conversations. Really quick, this is also likely to shut down what's called Broca's area, the speech center of the brain. If you find yourself stuttering, stammering, or completely selectively mute in that moment, that's Broca's area shutting down. Okay? That's what that is. Now, if you've been sitting here during this video thinking, yes, this is me. This is exactly me, Adam. Like, are you watching me? I need you to understand something very important. You are not some damaged goods. You're not emotionally broken. You're not made wrong. You didn't choose to become this way. What happened to you as a child forced your nervous system to adapt in the only way it could to keep you safe. That little girl who learned to freeze, who learned to mask and hide her feelings, who learned that being perfect was the only way to avoid pain, she was doing exactly what she needed to do to survive. Now, the fact that people call you cold when you're burning up inside, it's not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of how well your survival system worked. You became so good at protecting yourself that even you sometimes forget that there's a whole person underneath that mask. But here's the thing that changes everything. Now that you know what's been happening, you know that you're not mysterious or broken or wrong. You have quiet, disorganized attachment style. And that's a real thing with a real explanation that we can scan your brain and see. You can begin to recognize when it's happening instead of just feeling confused about why you can't speak or why you shut down. Now, most importantly, you can start making choices about when to let people see the real you. Not everybody deserves access to your inner world. Some people do, but you'll be selective about that. And now you have the awareness to be able to see how you can respond. Now, I want to be very clear here. The fix for this, and I've done this a lot with my female clients, is full understanding of what you're experiencing and why. This video has started that process. The next component is a detailed step-by-step instruction on managing your communication skills, your approaches, what's normal, what's allowed, what's expected, and how to recognize good and bad relationships. You have to have a field guide on how to respond so you never freeze again. You need the phrasing of questions to ask and things to say, how to apply boundaries and what boundaries would be helpful. You need to understand your needs and how to articulate them to another person. We have the 3 levels of needs. You need the 4 levels of trust, of who to trust and how to filter others. You need the basic instructions that you didn't have time or guidance to learn as a child. Other people learned these. You didn't have the luxury because you were surviving. You're going to need to learn them now. Okay? One of the fastest ways to do that is with direct mentorship in a structured program that runs you through teaching you that. Now, me and my team of coaches, we specialize in helping people accelerate that process. If you do have quiet, disorganized attachment style, I welcome you to send us an email at support@adamlanesmith.com. Let us talk with you. Let us just show you some options so you can really begin that learning, dive deep, get it done, and stop freezing. And then the people that you love won't misunderstand you anymore. You won't have to be afraid anymore. You can actually engage in relationships and feel loved. You can feel safe. You can let people know how you really feel, and they can know that you love them. If you are tired of feeling disconnected from everybody around you, if you are tired of being afraid, if you're tired of not knowing what to do, and you want to live your life instead of surviving, send us an email, support@adamlanesmith.com. We are here to help. Thank you for your time today. I am Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. I welcome your emails, but also please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, ring the little bell for notifications, come to my live streams, and I will see you in the next video.